I think, yes, now we are recording. I'm just closing this in the background, pausing. Perfect. All right, we are live. I'm here with Roxan McDonald. I'm so stoked to talk to you today. A lot of people probably know you. I wouldn't say a lot of people, some people, as your IG handle, spiritual as fuck or spiritual AF. I actually found you so long ago, like, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago when I was actually doing a meme only page. I wasn't doing anything personal. And I know I found you and I actually, would repost a lot of your stuff. And I just want to say something real quick too about memes. Like, I feel like most people know what memes are, but like I know my dad's watching this and he was like, what's a meme? So if anybody doesn't know what a meme is, it's like, how would you describe a meme? Like a little like reshare on Instagram or something, that like little inspirational quote, something funny, right? I mean,
Well,
really.
it's an image with text, and it tells a bigger story than just that. So what I think of as a meme is image with text, and it's one image.
Easy. Yeah, something really
Or
simple.
video meme, I guess. There's video memes, but it's something very simple and clear. I actually kind of think of them as our generation's haiku poems.
Oh yeah, that's a cool way to look at it. So yeah, you are doing memes, and I know you kind of have integrated your some more personal stuff into your page, but I started out just doing memes because I find a lot on Instagram. Like, I like writing. I like writing stuff like captions and all that. That's kind of where my heart is. And I actually did a post on this recently. It's hard. Like, I feel awkward in pictures. So like a lot of the time I'm like finding myself taking pictures in order to go with the things I've already written. And memes are so easy because they're just plentiful everywhere, right? So I kind of transitioned, getting off gear here. But anyway, I found you a while ago. You post a lot of funny stuff. That's kind of why I initially followed you. But now I've been seeing you doing so many more cool things. Like, you have your deck out, we're going to talk about. You have your retreats. You're writing a memoir. Like, there's so many cool things that you're working on that I want to talk about. But first, to start out the podcast, you have so much experience with addiction. And I've done a couple episodes on addiction. It's near and dear to my heart. It's in my family. And, you got sober when you were 15, been 28 years. That's fucking amazing, by the way. And was something that was so interesting to me, it stuck out. You were a part of the world's first and longest running clean and sober high school. And after graduating, you went on to become the director, and you spent 14 years working in the front lines of addiction and trauma recovery. So if you just want to speak on that, that sounds so cool and interesting, something new I've never heard of. So just your story with addiction, sobriety, and all that.
Okay. Well, thank you, and I'm excited to be here. So, um, where would I start? So I come from a long line of people with addiction issues and alcoholism and mental health issues. And I grew up in a situation where I was getting, like I grew up with chronic extreme trauma. And that is a major thing that will add into your propensity to have addiction issues. The other thing that I had was a community around me that had a lot of access to alcohol and other drugs, and from a really young age. So I was drinking, and my family would often put hard alcohol in baby bottles, so to get babies to sleep. Which so I probably was drinking from a nipple. uh, um, and then by the time I was 5, I knew how to pump a keg so there wouldn't be foam. And I used to go to my cousin's parties and sit like cross-legged on top of the keg when I was really like 5, and pour everyone's drink, and then I would just pour my own drink. Um,
Do you have conscious memories of like what you were thinking at that time? Did you know what it was, or was it just like, this is the adult beverage, Like, were you processing anything when you were that young about it?
I mean, it was just so normal. I mean, I think I knew when I was around adults to like pretend like I didn't drink a lot. Like I would be like, "Oh, can I have a sip?" But really, I was out drinking. Young. I do remember. having that ache and that need that I felt better when I was on something. And I also, but I think a lot of that is me. No, I know that I felt better when I was on something. And then there's a lot of my life has been looking back at that. So I think I don't know if I have a really clear idea of what I was feeling back then. I knew that I really liked drinking. I liked smoking pot. I liked taking lots of pills, and I felt more natural around people that were doing that.
Did you feel like it was just purely like, was it escapism for you? You just felt, because that feeling, I know I have a few very people very close to me in my life that have that feeling of just wanting to be on some sort of substance. It doesn't really
Mhm.
matter what it is. It's like, it's almost like that escape from reality. I mean, and I you hear about this all the time with addiction, is that the reality is just so painful that you just want to be outside of it. So was it just escapism for you, or did you, I mean, was it more than that? Like it was just your group of friends, like maybe you felt a sense of belonging, like you said, you felt more comfortable around people?
I think it was so many things. It was so good. It was so fun. Um, it was a really healthy choice for me. I think I'm so lucky that I had that coping strategy. It was a reasonable response to want to be out of myself, to want to soothe myself, with the amount of trauma that I was experiencing, and then the amount of trauma I was experiencing from just being alive, like with anxiety and depression, um, and just it hurts to be alive. And so all of those things put together, I look back on me being young and drinking and doing drugs as a absolutely healthy, reasonable response to what was going on in my life. And and so there was, I mean, it was manyfold. It was really fun. I had a blast at times. It was really effective. I could sleep at night when sleeping was difficult. I could laugh with people when laughing was difficult. I could face fourth grade when fourth grade was difficult. you know, I I I could feel connected. I had a group of people that we were kind of outside. I was growing up in the Nancy Reagan Just Say No. I don't even know if you know about that. It was so long ago. But I remember being in, fourth and fifth grade with Just Say No. And I was sitting back being like, y'all don't know what you're talking about, because like I knew that they just didn't know what they were talking about. Like weed was actually a really good thing. And even
And it
though,
still is, for the record.
yeah, yeah, for some people, I mean, it's like, I don't, for some people, it's like, I mean, I'm not, I don't want to get into like, I used to do these radio shows for the Yes School, the Clean and Sober High School I ran. And the only thing people wanted to do was debate cannabis. And I was like, I think it's great. Like, I think it's great just because I think some people are striving to be sober and I want them to have the access to it. I'm not against weed at all. I loved weed.
Well, I just think it goes back to who you are as an individual. It's like, I mean, cheese can be harmful if you're addicted to cheese. Like you can, it's who you are as a person. And if you know that you have a tendency to abuse things, abuse substance, and you know in yourself that, cannabis isn't a good thing for you, don't smoke it. Absolutely. But then, it's like that for anything, right? And I just
Mhm.
have to say, I am very humbled in this moment listening to how you are speaking about your addiction and using things, prior, because I feel like with so many people, and especially in the addiction, what do you want to call it? When a lot of people talk about addiction, there's a lot of shame. There's a lot of, I shouldn't have been doing this, or I can't believe I did this. I can't believe I was one of those kids, or just all this negative talk around it. And I mean, it's very um inspirational to hear you talk about what you were going through, and it's like, hey, this is what I needed to do to survive. Like I just feel like if more people had a spin on it, like that objective, like this is what happened to me, or this, I don't even want to say what happened, but this is just, I mean, it's just what happened. It's very humbling to hear. So like, good for you to have that perspective and carry that. Like, you clearly embody that.
Well, thank you. I think a lot of, having a lot of years of sobriety and a lot of work on unpacking shame and unpacking it with other people. So when I'd be working with people who are dealing with the consequences of their substance abuse, and if I would come at it like, you did really bad things and now you need to stop doing really bad things because you just don't want to be a bad person, there's no good in there. There's nothing about, like, people, like, I really love that I don't know if you weren't, we weren't recording when you talked about it, but that it is a matter of connection. It is like addiction and addiction recovery, a major component is about connecting. And so when I would be working with people, what I would be looking at is like, what did you need? And how did it stop working? You got what you needed from something. Every single human being, no matter what they do, has a really good reason for doing it. And if we, even when it is absolutely self-destructive, it doesn't mean that it's a right reason. It doesn't mean it's a reason I agree with. But if we can look at, like, what if we keep digging, we're going to find that really good reason for doing what we did. And then if we can address or address the substance abuse, or address what you need in recovery, is something that's going to tap into that. Because if we ignore what you need, you're not going to have sustainability with anything.
So then the key is, like you're just saying, to identify why it is you were using what you were using or doing what you were doing, and then finding a way in your world today. How can you find a healthy way to compensate, or not to compensate, but to fill that void that you were trying to fill with the substance? And is that mainly the work around addiction that you do, is trying to help people find how to fill their void with what they were using substance for prior?
I don't know. I think the fill the void idea is a little simplistic for me. Um, Let me think about that a second, because it's a really good question.
Mm-hmm. Take your time.
I think so. With habitual destructive behavior, there comes a place where there's the need for something. There's a need. I really needed to have an escape from myself, from my world, from my past, from the fear of what was about to happen. I needed to numb, and I needed fun and connection, and I needed all these things. So when I, look back on how I got sober and I was able to really arrest that addiction, there was one part where it goes, I really needed a lot of meaning in my life, because what meaning did, values, and it gave me a place, it gave me a barometer for how much self-care I needed. So when I could see that I was acting outside my values, I could go, oh, what I need is more, I need to be able to soothe my emotions. Because what I would see is that when I would not be having a soothing experience, or I would be out of control, or with my emotions, I would start to act in ways that went against what I valued. Another major part of addiction is denial. And so I think what I worry about with the idea of, let's go fill your void, or people, I think people can get in recovery in so many different ways. I don't even think that abstinence from all substances is the way for everyone to go. I think that's one mistake that a lot of professionals and addicts and people in recovery have made, is that there's some, because it's their way, because it's their practice, that they are like, this is the only way. And then there's all these people that are like, have come to some sort of health and wellness outside of that model, where they did heroin for 20 years and then they got completely clean and sober and got help and got insight, and then were able to go and dabble in other things. It's often a very dangerous journey to figure out, but I know people who have done that. But with the denial piece for me is the thing that that I think for me was the thing that would get me what I would know what I would know that I'd gone against my values. I would know that I had harmed myself. I'd know that I'd harmed others. I would have this deep desire to change that behavior. I would have this clarity of like, oh no, and for me as a teenager, I was like, I am going to get all the negative consequences of every member of my family because I'm doing exactly what they did. And I'd have this like, whoa, okay, And then I would go to bed and be like, tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I'm going to do it differently. And then I would get up with the same, like, just determination. And then by the middle of the day, I would be the underside of my skin would be itching, and then my thoughts would kind of would start to go in a direction that didn't have my best interest at heart. That it would denial comes in, and denial tells you the thing that's the worst for you is actually a good idea. And that's the pattern. And then you do that thing that really is harmful, that you've had the even a tiny awareness is not in your best interest. And then you do that repeatedly. Denial has to come into the consequences. Denial plays a part in the behaviors outside of just the use. So when people I'm going to go in and figure out how to do my own recovery and not seek reflection, they get lost a lot because denial becomes this, like whirlpool. And I worry that, I don't know if I worry, but I just think if people are listening to this and going, there's so many different ways to go about it. And that, yes, there are, but I really think that having honest reflection, honest, like truth telling was one of the most beneficial things I have ever brought into my life. That I consistently bring that in.
When you were saying denial, what did you feel like you were denying? Were you denying you had this determination, right? It's like that reset. Because I relate to, I've never had a substance addiction problem, but I had a large issue with food, like a really like very deep rooted food addiction issue. And I went through very much of the same. It's like I would binge eat all night, and then it's like I would just feel disgusted with myself. And then I'd be like, tomorrow's a new day. I'm going to get up. I'm going to feel great. And then the day would go on and I would feel okay. I'd eat healthy. And then it's like midday or night, all the thoughts came back and I almost felt like I needed to just binge eat again. So were you denying that determination that you had, that motivation? It was like, it crept up and then all of a sudden it kind of dwindled down, or what were you denying?
Well, denial, I think, is often explained in a way that it's explained as, this is how I deny my behavior towards others. So there's the 7 common forms of denial, where it's basic denial. Did you drink? No, I didn't. And when you did you steal that? No, I didn't. And I don't think I can off the top of my head remember, but it's like basic denial, intellectualizing, you get to know everything. Well, this actually isn't a negative behavior, because overeating is actually a farce because I read it in this thing and da-da-da. And so you skew what the truth was that you saw. Like the truth is that this behavior is not in line with my idea of what is best for me.
So this is different than lying, because lying's probably very simplistic, because I know this is probably more, denial is probably more of a psychological term that can explain patterns with addiction and things. But saying that you didn't drink when you did, is this to somebody else or just to yourself?
Well, that's the thing. So that if it's the denial I am talking about is both the external but the internal. The way our thoughts, the how we trick ourselves, how we have some thought pattern that keeps ourselves doing the things that we know aren't the best for us. And so that is the thing that would cause me not to want to wake up in the morning, is when I would, whether it was rationalizing or minimizing or getting angry and being like, well, the world sucks and life is unfair, so therefore I deserve. This day was too hard, so therefore blah, blah, blah.
You justify it, right? You make an excuse, or like not even an excuse, but a reason. Like, today was too stressful, or I'm feeling great today, or whatever you're feeling, it's justified.
Yeah, justification is one of those common forms of denial. The other thing that I think is not, if you look up, the 7 forms of denial on Google, you're going to find it. But there's the one too that's just the, um the like, I'm so fucked up part where it's just like, I'm just hopeless. Just fuck it. Ugh. And that's
Mhm.
the one. It's not on there. It's this like, and it's the like just sad sack denial where I will use that sometimes where I'm like, well, I'll never get it anyway. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I think the biggest thing that I've experienced being around addiction is, I mean, you can probably speak to the ups and downs and the fluctuations, and when you're, because I know a few people, they're trying to get out of unhealthy patterns, and sometimes there's 7 to 10 day sprints of like feeling great and they don't do the destructive behaviors that they're doing, but then it's like, I don't know what to call it, but what I was calling before, the void, the emptiness, the lack of meaning, or whatever it means to somebody, it kind of creeps up again. And if you don't have another mechanism in place to deal with that, whatever that is, stress, how to deal with your emotions, it's like if you don't have any other coping mechanism, it's almost impossible to not revert back to what you've been doing forever. So it's like a vicious cycle. And I mean, the only thing this is a very simplistic way to say it, I'm sure, and you can probably help me out here, but it's like the only way it seems to be able to get out of these patterns is to be able to sit with the discomfort long enough to develop new healthy ways to cope.
Yeah. I think sitting with discomfort is one of the key parts, the key ways that people with substance abuse issues, they lack the ability. Discomfort, even extreme happiness is extremely uncomfortable. And we find when we're in the midst of the habitual behavior, we find ways to avoid it. So yes, that's very clearly, it's a big ask though. So that's why that you have a manyfold um, approach to getting people to help people learn that skill, because it's a skill, and to ask people to just face themselves in one giant swoop is almost impossible unless they have some massive burning bush kind of spiritual awakening where they are given some sort of thing that then they pop. And I've known people who've had that, but most of the time it's that what I always envision is that we're running and we think there's this like 10-foot story black evilness or everything that we are don't want to face. Um, just that, yeah, like that everything,
The
and
monster.
the giant monster. And that if I turn around, it's going to just clobber me. And so to ask somebody to just turn around and face this 10-story demon of themselves is, you're asking them to die. And so when you can get them to go, I'm going to stand in between you and that, and you just have to scoop some forward. And we're just going to deal with a teeny tiny bit of that. And I'm going to be right here. And if you can gain that trust with somebody to just go, I can't deal with that big monster for you, but I'm going to stand next to you and let you run again if you need to run. But if you scoop just a little, I can help you deal with it. And so what I feel like recovery has just been this scooping until I can be like, well, I actually think I can handle this, some real discomfort.
Well, that's amazing because it actually kind of changes. I don't know if it changes my perspective, but it gives me a new perspective on the idea of relapsing because, I family members have been through rehab, and it's like it's kind of this weird thing where, and maybe I'm speaking on this from a little place of ignorance, but it's almost like so celebrated when people have like been clean for a certain amount of time, which should be because it's like that's great for people. But at the same time, it's almost celebrated so much that if you fuck up and you relapse, then there's this huge like depression or this crash of like you failed and you fucked up and if instead we looked at it as this like scooping, like you said, of like almost like relapses are like expected in a way, not necessarily encouraged, but if they happen, like it's normal, it's part of the process. And then you're scooping parts of yourself, seeing parts of yourself. It's like I feel like the process would be so much better and like easier for people, because I've been through some rehab, like the family programs with rehab, and I was young, so I kind of remember, but I remember it being a very felt like kind of like a corporate environment, if you will. Like everything was done in stages, and the way I know life now, it's like nothing can be just funneled through a system. It's like every person is unique. Everybody has their own way of healing. Somebody, like you said, may have a huge awakening. Like I heard the story of this one lady who smoked cigarettes for like 30 years. She did some like crazy ayahuasca trip and she like never smoked again, right? It's like all of a sudden she comes back. Then you have people who relapse 50 times and then all of a sudden they figured it out. They figured out whatever it was. So I don't know, this I did another episode on addiction. We talked about it, and just the way that a lot of the centers are structured these days, and especially with if you think about the concept of marketing and stuff, and how they market it, it doesn't feel right, is what I'm like. I keep beating around the bush here. It just doesn't feel right. And the more conversations I have about this, like with you, like you're just like boom, just like throwing all these amazing bombs out there, it just doesn't feel right. And I don't know what to do to get this information out there, because it's a topic that I'm passionate about too. But I guess just talking about it on a platform like this is the first step.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, I think that I mean, I never worked for a for-profit treatment program, so I, I, I don't have experience being in that, but I do see that anytime we try to just make some sort of system to deal with anything that has to do with a living, breathing, feeling being, it fails, and it fails a good portion or a portion of people. And so the programs I ran were really focused on community, and so each person would be dealt with or be addressed and met and witnessed in a certain way. And of course, we had models and we had things that were like, this is the best common practice, in the sense of, we have seen, this is the best that we can offer you. These are the best choices. But in the community, it was, or my job felt like I was very much being a leader in a community, so that the community could support each other. And I think that it gets lost when we're looking at each person needs to make a certain amount of money for it. But then rehabs also, like 28 days and 6 months away and all those things, they can do this really beautiful thing. And I experience it now. I teach at retreat centers, and I see pretty healthy people consistently going to places so that they can push back the world and get with themselves and get around people who care about this similar thing, and they get this clarity about like what matters. And treatment programs, what I dealt with a lot of young people coming out of treatment programs, and what I would see is that the ones who'd gotten an experience where I saw them carrying this little ball of light, and it was the thing that mattered, what they truly wanted underneath the world. So I want to be loving, I want to be kind, I want to be a good daughter, I want to honor the people, I want to honor my heritage, I want to be those kind of things. And that if what we could do for the people anywhere, that they get that little clarity, is to like, it dies out if you don't feed it. And so like I think just finding the place where if you get that clarity, you go someplace where it turns into a big old bonfire, and that is the thing I think helps sustain change, to help sustain that.
no,
And it can be different for everyone.
absolutely. I think that's the key part, is I think like what you're saying, I mean, addiction centers or certain programs absolutely can work run wonders for the right person.
Mm-hmm.
A few people that I know, actually just one, the guy, David on my podcast, the issue for him was he had a problem with binge drinking. However, he went to an outpatient program, and all of the things that they were recommending for him to do, it didn't align with him. Like they were like, you need to get rid of all your friends, like all the things that they, commonly recommend. And for him, he was like, something in his gut just didn't feel right about it. And he healed through other means, and he doesn't drink. I mean, he's in a great place now. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, it's like for certain people, that maybe are in a very weak place in their life where they feel like they can't really speak up yet, but then at the same time are also feeling like the certain programs they're in don't align with them. It's like they feel like they can't do certain things, or they're embarrassed that they can't do certain things, but they don't speak up. It's like, to have somebody like you would be very beneficial to talk to that person and say, like, what's really on your mind, and then they tell you, and then you guys can work appropriately. But I just don't know that there's a you everywhere in addiction centers. So I think it's just, I don't even know where I'm trying to go with this, but it depends on the person. And like you said, systematic things don't cater to every single person. It's just impossible. It's just really
Mhm.
impossible. So you are working at this school. Tell me about the school. It's an all sober high school. Like, that's really cool. I've never even heard of such a thing.
Yeah, it was called the Yes School, and it started in January 1989. And so it was a woman named Claire Wesley who was hired to go out into the streets of Santa Cruz and talk to all of the street kids. And she lured them back to the counseling center and would do these groups. And Claire is just this like magical badass priestess witch guru. Like she's amazing. And she kept just open, like having that space of like, I'm just going to witness you. I'm not trying to make you do anything. We're just going to talk. And then inevitably the group of young people started saying, I can't do all these things that matter if I'm still doing drugs. And so then they would, like, a group got sober, and then they would try to go back to high school. Their parents would be like, you have to go to school. And they'd go back to high school and they would be back in that culture and inundated with their triggers and with yeah, just opportunities to use. And so then they actually came to Claire and said, if you really want to help us, then give us a clean and sober place to go to school. So the magic of that place was that it was young people asked for it. And then they got together, Claire and those kids got together with the County Office of Education and that counseling agency and worked together. And they created this one room alternative school where uh, you got an accredited high school diploma through. We had one teacher, and then we would get counseling, group counseling every day after school, and then we'd have individual counseling and family counseling. And that to be there, you had to the student had to petition to be in. The student had to want to be there, and then they had to have a certain amount of time completely clean and sober, and then we did have a pretty rigorous thing that we had to do. We had to really, really, really be invested in wanting to be there. And I got sober in March of 1990. So the school had been open for several months, and then I came right, a few weeks after I got sober, and then I went to school there for, 2.5 years, and then when I was 10 years sober, I came back and became a counselor, which I never thought I'd do. Claire was, when she interviewed me to become a counselor, she was like, you were the last person I thought would be a counselor. Cause
Why
I was
why do
like,
you say that?
cause counselors were, I mean, I loved them, but they were like sad sacks. So, the, okay, like I
Yeah.
just
You had
didn't,
too
I was
much
out. Yeah.
personality for that.
Yeah. And I was I wanted to go do stuff. I mean, I did. I like, I got to go, I became an auto mechanic right out of high school. And then I got to travel around the world for several years. And I was just going to go out and do my thing. And I didn't want to be a part of that world. And then, life happened and I ended up just like crawling into the place needing a job. And it became this thing that I feel like made me the best human being I could have been. Like it was a place where I showed up, and that was like all these gifts that I think I would have lost were cultivated because I got to show up and work with other people. I would
Did that
I think if I would have become a lawyer like I kind of wanted to, I would be so mean. I'm so glad I didn't do it.
I know that, oh my gosh, my cousin is he just passed his bar, and he's, yeah, it's an interesting industry. I'll just put it that way. But I'm sure what you were doing was helping you heal.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
yourself. I mean, I just feel that already without even hearing you say that it did. So when you became sober, I'm sure, like we were talking about, you probably went through many iterations of that feeling of like, you don't want to do this anymore, but then the destructive behaviors come back, and so many iterations, I'm sure. What was it? If you could identify it, I'm sure it's 101 things and feelings and realizations and whatnot, but the last time the last time you would drink, right? It was just drinking or drugs or anything. Like, what aligned within you to make you never go back that last time?
I I got I I just got so clear on where I was going. Like it was just my face was slammed up against it, and I some there were things in my life that I'd been doing that already trying to be sober, and I was going to these like groups where people were talking about sobriety, and then I went out and drank, and I tried to control it, and then I woke up face down on a hardwood floor in a heavy metal band's house, and I crawled out of that house and stood on this street in Santa Cruz. It's Mission Street, and Mission Street turns into Highway 1, and Highway 1 goes all the way to San Francisco, 100 or 80 miles north. And I stood there and I just knew, and I just was like, do I want that life? Do I want the life I know I'm going to have if I continue to do this? And I didn't. And I was willing to never, ever have fun again. And that's what I thought. I'm willing to never, ever have fun again because I don't want to live through what I know I'm about to live through. And so then I just clawed towards what I wanted. I just I just did what I found people that I knew had my best interest at heart, and even if I disagreed with them, unless it was something that made something that was uh, going against my um, like internal gut guide about what's right and good, I did it. So it was like I gave over my agency in a lot of ways to people that would guide me. And I just was like, I will give this a year and I will do what they say, and then I'll get to decide. And so my idea too was that I was going to wait until I was 21 or 22 because I wanted to get through my 21st birthday. Because the other thing that I had was that I was like, people who've acted like I've acted drank, until I was drunk consistently and been out of control with behavior. And people who've had my level of trauma, is it ever like a really good idea? Not just like a dangerous idea, but is it ever a really good idea to go and drink and do drugs? And I'd even at 15, I'd had enough education about it where I was like, that's actually just like, it's never a great idea. It's like, at best, it's like, I could maybe get away with it, but I've just had the clarity of like, give myself some years if I want to have a chance. And so my idea was that um, I was gonna give it a full year, and that if it was all like feasible, I was gonna wait until I was 22 to decide whether I would drink again.
So then
And
that
by
was
the time I was 22,
7 years. So basically you're like giving yourself 7 years, and I'm sure by then, I mean, how did you feel on your 22nd birthday?
oh, I was like, I had this woman in my life who was like, go make a life that you just don't want to give up, and don't want to risk. And so by the time I was I thought like, well, is it worth it? And even the chance? And I was like, no, not at all. And
Wow,
it
that's
was just not even a question.
powerful. Create a life that you don't want to give up. And it sounds like you throughout this you did a lot of like visualization where it was like I asked you what was that final straw, and it's like you just saw where you were going. Something that I thought of when you were talking, a challenge I think these days, and I don't know if this was true back when you were in like the 90s, but I mean I was born in 90, so I'm not sure.
My
But
sobriety would be as tall as you.
um but the issue now is like, I mean, everything is surrounded by alcohol and food. And I add food because I realize this overcoming my food issues is that everything has to do with going to a restaurant with shitty food and getting fucked up. It's like there's so much social anxiety these days. It's just on the rise. I feel like, especially with screens and social media, and we all kind of hide behind our devices a lot, that going out in public, it's like people are just more and more nervous than they've ever been. So it's like everybody wants to drink. And so when you know, make that decision for yourself, like I actually don't drink. I've just never really been I'm pretty anxious most of the time, so I kind of have this like reverse response to substance where like I kind of wish I used it more. Like you know, it's like I'm just trying to get into like using and smoking more cannabis because it does help me relax, but I usually have to
Mhm.
go through like a paranoia period, or like when I drink, it's like I'll freak out that I'm going to get too out of control. So it's like I'm like the opposite spectrum,
Uh-huh.
which is pretty interesting. But I just don't really drink. But then because I don't drink, my husband doesn't drink anymore. He had some issues with alcohol. It's like it's so hard to like do anything with people because nobody wants to have like a sober conversation with no food involved because we don't really eat out either. So it's like it's a challenge, like especially for people trying to change their lifestyle, and their friends and everything around their previous lifestyle had to do with clubs and dancing and going out, going to bars, being around, going to happy hours. Every meal out has drinks in it, and then all of a sudden you throw that all away. It's like not just throwing away that part of you, it's like restructuring your entire life. And I mean that's terrifying. It's just terrifying. And so I don't know. I feel for the struggle, but it's just so, I admire people that can get through it. I mean, in dealing with my anxiety, um, like my husband, he's had a substance issues pretty much his whole life, and dealing with anxiety and depression, and he had a very traumatic past. And for me, sometimes I think like I almost had it, I don't want to call it easier, but substances didn't work for
Mhm.
me. So it wasn't an option. And I find that aspect so intriguing. And I know that they're talking about is there something to do with like an addiction gene or whatever? Because I've always wondered why some people in my life, just the substances work for the stress management and coping. And for someone like me, it takes me in the opposite direction. Like I wonder why that is.
Mhm. Well, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of science around, you know, addiction genes and alcoholic genes and, our ethnicity and our propensity for being alcoholic with how long alcohol has been introduced to the culture. They can try, there's these maps where you can look at the world and go, oh, alcohol was first made in the Middle East, and then it spread, and there's like then you could see like how long it's been in the culture for how how apt we are to become alcoholics. I think though that also I think that we're all, well, and that's a big, but I think that we I don't want to say I don't want to say an absolute. So I think um I generally end up seeing in my life that my problems give me gifts and lead me towards what I truly need. And I don't want to say that for anybody else, but for me, I can look back on my life, and maybe it's that I chose to look back on my life and see it that way. But I see it in a lot of people I know who it's like if we can just look at our lives as or the things that come up for us or the things that don't work, they lead us to what does.
Mm-hmm.
And um, and to be just really interested in each one of us, and especially with ourselves. Like I try to, when I would be working with addicts, and when I really would love to make sure that I do it for myself more, is get like eye level with like myself as like a 5-year-old. And this isn't inner child stuff. This is just to like, how would we act to a kid where we go, what's up with you? What do you like? What works for you? Oh, you're changing. Wow. Instead of like, well, you wasted your life doing the sobriety thing because it's like blah blah blah, like, or it would sure be great if if alcohol
Mm-hmm.
chilled you out, instead of going like, oh well, we tried that, isn't that it's interesting, let's try something else. To just get curious and stay curious. And if we do it with other people, like I tend to feel like the people that do that with me. I have a mentor who's been in my life since junior high, and she's 84, and I can tell her anything, and she's always like, whoa, wild. Isn't that curious? Like, oh, remember when you were blah, blah, blah? And then she goes, life is long, isn't it? You never know, and then she'll like help, like, it's never like a, oh, like,
No,
oh,
that's curiosity. It's everything. It's like approaching it like you were a kid. Like you said, like
yeah.
you're 5 years old. Because I find myself when I like what I fall into when I want to help somebody because I am in so much pain, like I want them to change their life because I see them suffering. I'm always like, you need to do this, this, and this. You need to change this. Like, be like this, right? It's just it's my panic mode. I know it's not helpful. Nobody wants to be told what to do. Instead, it's like look at somebody that's suffering and like, why are you doing that? Like, why do you feel the need to do that? And approaching it with that lens, when you can do that with other people, you can start to do it with yourself. And this is more of like a metaphysical thing, and I don't know that you're going to have an actual answer for this, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts. It's like, why do you think some people, it's like I look at some people, there's so many different scenarios. It's like there's not one that's they're all unique. But it's like some people just find this power within them to like have a good perspective, and like you said, all of a sudden they change their whole life and then they find meaning in this, and then other people are just stuck in a rut. And it's like even though those people, I feel like you see they kind of want to change, but they're so stuck. It's like, why do you think, like what do you think births this ability to like you said, look at your problems as good things? These are great things. I learn lessons. Like some people are just so pessimistic, and I would say the first answer that comes to me is like, well, upbringing, programming, and all this stuff. But then no, some people are programmed a certain way their whole life, and all of a sudden it's like, boom, they're like, this was great. Like, what do you think makes that happen for some people?
I mean, I don't know. And I'll lead with I don't know. I think it could be so many different things, but if I was forced to say,
So this is just like
yeah,
brainstorming. It's like
yeah.
I'm not a
No, I
lawyer.
don't think you're forcing me. I'm just like, if there was like, okay, this is it, you have to say something, I would
Hmm.
say the first thing that comes to me is like, getting your junk in the ring, like, get your balls behind it. And that there's a way that will like intellectualize, like, oh, I should do this, or I'm going to go and show up, but like never getting that, like, I'm just going to take my like oomph that my ovaries, I'm going to get my ovaries into the entire thing, and really go for it, like. And what that usually means, and that stuff that you were talking about, is when you slam the door on the behavior, you start doing things that you tell on yourself. You get to where you make trap doors to where if you start that behavior again, you don't have an easy way to hide. That I have a thing about, like, I know that, I mean, this isn't the most, well, it's I'm going to talk about boners.
Go for it.
It's like, what boner are you going to stroke? Are you going to stroke I call it fernta. It's fernta. Everything sucks. Fernta. It's hard. Fernta. It's losing your boner for life. And are you going to stroke that and be like, fernta, blessed? Or are you going to stroke the integrity boner, the one that goes, I will fucking survive. I will have the life I want. I will, it doesn't matter how many times I fuck up. I'm coming back. It doesn't matter how many times people misunderstand me. I'm coming back. It doesn't matter whether people see how good I am. I'm going to stroke that integrity boner. I'm going to keep it rock hard. Like, go, like that thing of like, I'm going to put risk involved with myself, like, to make it so it's hard to go against what that clarity of what's good and right. And so the ways that I've done that is like getting people in my life that if I start to act weird, I have I have at least 5 people in my life who I have given permission to and told enough to where they're like, you know,
Mhm.
and no, that doesn't work. And they'll set boundaries with me. I have enough alarms that go off to go, like, I've had deep interest in that, like, wow, if I start to think about shoplifting, that's a major thing. Like shoplifting is the equivalent of me slamming heroin because shoplifting will lead to that, that question. And that didn't come from me shoplifting and then doing heroin. That came from me like wanting to, change a tag at Ross Dress for Less because I thought that the world wasn't fair and I should. And I noticed from lots of curiosity that then a week and a half later, I'm thinking, why does everyone else get to drink and I can't? And so then just like, oh,
You're catching the behavior in the very early stages of it before it even progresses.
yeah. And that's like why I'm so much about gratitude, because so much of my habitual destructive behavior is connected with me asking the wrong why. The why does this happen? Why is this? In fairness. Like I used to have a sign in my staff room that said "fuck fair." Fair gets us into like cornered. We don't. Fair does not. It's not the best practice for us. And so when I start thinking fair, I win the game. I get to do whatever I want because I had the shittiest childhood. And so fair means that I don't have to have high expectations for myself. So fuck fair, And for me, if I start thinking fair, alarm goes off. And if I start thinking how bad everything is or how the deck is stacked against me, I get in danger. So I do a gratitude practice. It's like I, you know, I mean, that's me stroking the integrity boner. That's me making sure that I'm staying
I
on.
love
Like
that, by the way.
you know,
That's awesome. The integrity boner, I love it. Yeah, I was talking to my brother today about because we were talking a lot about neuroplasticity. I'm actually starting this new program that's supposed to help rewire the limbic system in your brain out of chronic fight or flight.
mm-hmm.
And we were talking about it, and it makes sense unpeeling back all of the layers of your triggers. Like you're talking about it, you're hitting the nail on the head right now. Unpeeling back the layers of your triggers and then being able to catch yourself at a 2 versus an 8. It's like when you're at an 8 chronically, like when you're just going, full force in the behavior, you can't even see where it starts at 1, 2, 3, 4. But you've done so much work backpedaling, unpeeling your layers, if you will, that now you can interject with yourself or have people hold you accountable. And I mean, it makes sense, but I just feel like some people don't have the tools, and I don't know. It's this the part of me that's talking right now is the part of me that just wants everybody to feel good and happy and to not be suffering and not be struggling, because it hurts, and I just want everybody to be able to deal with their shit, but it's not that easy. And I this question plagues me all the time of like why some people are stuck and why some people get out. But then it just goes back to what you said about the integrity boner. It's like you got to stroke that positivity and set up life in your life to be willing to have people hold you accountable. See, I think sometimes we say that we're ready for things. Do you think this is true? You say you're ready for something, but you're really not ready for it, or you really don't want it. Like what? I've I've always wondered about that. It's like there are certain parts of me where I feel like I say I want to change them, or I say I don't want to do things anymore, or I say I'm ready to be this new version. There's like a little inkling that I feel like way down in the gut where I'm like, I don't know if you're being fully honest with yourself. There's a part of you holding on to that old behavior. Is that like from your experience, is that we're just holding on to certain behaviors because that's what we need to do to survive? That's what we know. It's pattern.
Well, I just think bless our hearts, we speak 10 steps ahead of ourselves. Usually we do say, people will say, oh, they're like, they lied because they weren't quite doing that thing that they said, or they said they were ready and they weren't. And usually it's like that idea that we speak things into existence. And so like, bless our hearts. Like if we express it in any way, it's us kind of leaning that direction. And yeah, I just think we do often say it. It's like when, you say you're going to break up with somebody, but you're not, like, you're not. Your boner's still harder for them than it is for your health and wellness. and not to just be like, oh, like you should never say you're going to break up with somebody, but to just go, oh, like, when I think that compassion thing comes up for me, and I've developed it better when I have, it's a major part of my recovery is about being of service and about showing up for other people and being deeply interested in them. And so when I have been able to show up for somebody and go, I'm not going to take shit from you. I'm not going to enable behavior, but I am just going to love you no matter what. And I am going to love you in the midst of how fucked up you are, because we're all fucked up at times. And then when I can see that in another person, and I can kind of see it in myself. So in the times where I've been, say, in the relationship with the, like, with the, the not, the fuck boy, like, to just go like, oh, bless my heart. Like something's going, like like, okay, here I am. I'm saying it, and I'm saying I'm done, but I'm probably going to go back, and maybe I can say that too. And so that's usually the thing I think that develops more, is like when I can say it, that as well, to just go, I'm getting ready to be done, but I'm not like done. And then like, oh, I'm lovable right here too.
Yeah, I heard a thing from a friend the other day. She was talking about affirmations, and I think you and I posted this. I posted it a while back, and I think you've posted it before. It was that meme with the affirmations where it's like, "I'm beautiful." No, you're not, and it's like all the voices, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and that's uh, it's been challenging because it's like, this whole idea of positive self-talk where it's like you're trying to tell yourself things and talk to yourself like, I feel this way or I feel that way, and it's just not fucking true. You just don't feel it at the time, and it doesn't work. And I was listening to this thing from a friend, and she was like, well, you can actually change your self-talk to, instead of saying like, you know I am happy, it's, I am willing to think about what I need to do to be happy, or I am ready to be happy, or I think I'm ready to be happy, but I'm not sure. Maybe I should think about this a little bit more. It's like these stages of self talk. It sounds like exactly what you're talking about here. And another thing I thought about what you were just saying is like, we can learn so much about what we think of other people. We can learn so much about ourselves because everything is a mirror. I've been realizing this. I've been so attuned lately with my judgments. When I judge other people, I feel like disgusting and shit, and I feel gross when I do it. And then I look at the times when I'm not really judging, when it's like the same situation can happen with the same person, and I just have so much love and compassion for them, or I have curiosity of like wondering why they're doing what they're doing. And in those times, I'm on top of the fucking world with myself. I'm walking around, right? And it's like this whole world is a projection. It's like everybody is just projecting onto other people. It's bizarre. I mean, to me, like we're just walking around literally putting our shit out there onto other people. And it's I don't know, it's just fascinating to me, like human psychology and how everything works.
Yeah. Well, we're so powerful in our ability to call towards ourselves what we need. I see myself do it all the time, that I call in people to project my thing onto that needs to be healed. And I see that we're like, we're just like agitating the wound until it becomes so apparent that we heal it. And I think that's incredible that we do it.
So you're saying, like, explain that a little bit. So calling people in, so this may not even be like productive behaviors. It's like if you're trying to heal some part of yourself that maybe it's like, for example, like for me, like judging people. So you think that we actually like call out and seek, maybe not everybody, but in your example, like seeking these mirrors, if you will, in other people to just shed light more on whatever you need to deal with. Because I have a couple situations in my life right now where it's like they are just fucking sticking. It's like no matter what I do and how I try to change my perceptions of these people, it's like I feel like I can't, and I know that's not true. There's something like sticking, and it, like, I keep digging at it, and it doesn't go away, and it keeps getting worse and worse and worse. So it's very intriguing what you're saying right now.
Oh, well,
I
I
mean,
mean,
I
for me, know that I think, I mean, belief is so powerful. And it doesn't matter if I play the belief out to the nth thing. If I play any belief out, it like logics itself out of existence, really. And so so I choose belief as like, is it a tool that works for me? And how am I better when I believe this? And how am I worse? So for me, I came to pretty early on that when it came to about spirituality and about well-being for me, that I saw a choice in that everything is either a shit show and life is about just slogging through and gaining power and money and security and manipulating people in order to get that, or not manipulating and just clawing my way towards it, or I'm here to learn. And every second, every situation, I have that choice. And when I'm here to learn, I like myself better. I I feel the world more distinctly. I'm kinder. I engage in a way that I enjoy. I'm generally happier. I'm in less fear. When I go to, that my job is to get security and get power and be right, um, and life is about hurdles in a big giant shit pond. I act in a way that causes me more anxiety, more unhappiness, causes me to not want to look back at myself at the end of the day. Um, and so, with that belief, that minute to minute choosing, that I I think that I am much better when I get into that very powerful position and belief of that, yeah, I came here for a reason. I don't know where I came from. I don't know where I'm going, but if I'm coming here to learn, and I can see that there's far too many times where I have come and into a situation and brought the exact things I needed in order to heal what I needed to heal. And it's a choice. I get to choose whether I heal it or not, but I really feel like I see other people do it too. And it's an alignment in the way I see the world. I'm not necessarily saying it's absolutely true. And if you don't believe what I believe, then you're wrong. I'm just saying I decide to see the world that way. And I see it in my friends. It's like when I look at my friends and see like, oh my gosh, like that is inexplicable how you called in the exact person that caused you to judge so harshly that you had to face yourself and heal that part of you that you've been cruel to yourself for years. Like,
Mm-hmm. Wow. That those two choices, I mean, I agree with you. I feel those. I mean, just for myself, I feel those too. What barriers or what obstacles do you feel like you face in making the decision between the two? It's like, when do you feel like you can easily choose the learning perspective? Or when do you find it, on the flip side, hard to choose that?
mm-hmm. It's when I'm in fear. It's hard when
Okay.
I'm in fear. And when I've had practice facing a fear, I generally have a lot easier time. So when the fear has a face that I recognize that I've already been through, then I have a lot easier time choosing to show up with the lesson. And when the fear has a face that I haven't had experience with, then I stumble through wanting to protect and wanting to achieve an upper hand, and
Well, because
you
it's the
know.
unknown, right? I actually just talked about this on my last episode,
Mhm.
simulating the unknown. It's like when we can do that and try to, or when we've been through, like you said, a similar fear or a similar situation, or we kind of know what something is going to be like, it is a little bit easier having that experience under our belt. But then all of a sudden, the unknown is just, it's so scary. But it's oftentimes is like ends up being the best thing that could have ever happened to us. I look back on my hardships, and God, so many periods of my life where I was like so angry or so confused or so sad or resentful or just scared shitless. And then, but every single one of them led to something else that led me here today, and I've never felt better. So it's like I say that so much because I want to like shine that on the world. And I don't know, it's you said something at the beginning of this episode where you're like, it's really fucking painful to be alive. And like some days I really just feel that, you know? It's like it's fucking hard, but it helps when we're in it together.
Yeah. And it helps that we can see that in other people. And I think I still want to avoid suffering, but when you said I want everyone to be happy and out of suffering, I think, oh no, no. I don't. If who would we be if I hadn't suffered? I would be such an asshole right now. Like
No,
I don't say that to other people about their suffering. Like I don't ever say let everything happens for a reason because that's just shitty. But I also like I think when people like I recently had a couple friends who had very close. One had his dog die, and one had a very dear friend die. And I fought against saying, "I'm so sorry that you're feeling this," because I'm like, if I do that, then I fight against that. Life is filled with grief, and that's how we show up. That's the whole deal. Life is filled with lessons. Life is filled with loss. Everything that lives dies. Everything we love gets taken away, and life is so gorgeous and beautiful, and it is in the face of that
no,
and then I just want to say one more thing. I still meditate on may all beings be happy, may all beings be free. I get that's my daily meditation. So I just want to say that too, because I'm not saying I hope everyone's fucked
no,
up and
I'm with you because like I remember what I said earlier, and what I actually meant by that, I should have chosen my words better, is that what I wish for with people is I wish for almost like a different perspective around the suffering. It's like it's impossible to be out of suffering. Life is suffering, right? But I don't know what to do when I'm around someone who is just like a total victim to their suffering. And it's like but I get it because it's pattern. It's like sometimes that's all people know. They don't know how to get out of it. But at the same time, when you can clearly see when someone doesn't want to really get out of it, whatever that means, they're just stuck in this perpetual state of like, just poor me, like everything happens to me, my life is hard, like just that constant. It's like I don't know what to do with that. So then because we fear what we don't know, I sit here and I'm like, what? Like then I turn into like my drill sergeant, me like, you gotta do this or what the fuck, because I just don't know what to do. So what I wish for people is a change in perspective of the suffering, to be able to see that what they're going through, even in this moment, is leading to something that could be so useful only if they just paid attention. And I know that the suffering, it's like it's impossible. And so I mean, suffering, like you were saying, some of my I mean, sometimes it's crazy. Like I go through, like I deal with panic attacks and other things, and like sometimes it's like I go through like a gnarly like panic attack or a phase or a day or some weird emotion. Like I remember there was one day recently where I found out that I was caffeine sensitive and I had coffee, and I mean I felt like I was on some sort of drug. I mean, it is a drug, but all day I just felt like out of my body, out of my mind. I was freaking out. But it's like in those moments when you reflect on them, there's so much to be learned and to see. And I want to give that to everybody. I think some people are just sitting in their suffering and they're like, poor me, oh my God, like, this, like, just victim. But I'm like, no, like, open your eyes. Like, I just want you to see that. That's what I meant,
hmm yeah, I totally agree with you. I
So
think a perception shift.
absolutely. Tell me about, I am always intrigued to hear about near death experiences. You had a near death experience, right? I mean, you said on a river, and
Yeah.
you quit to become a writer, which is I just love stories like that where something happens and then boom, 180. So tell me about that.
Um, well, I've been working at the schools for 14 years, and I thought that that was what I was going to do forever. I was so invested. I did have a period of time where I just couldn't rejuvenate. I was so like just stripped. Um, and I couldn't figure it out, and I was getting sick, and then none of my normal things were working. Um, and I've always been a writer, but I am, practical, and so I had this regular job, and I was going to writers groups and things. But I I actually am going to tell the bigger story I've never told. So
Ooh,
um,
okay.
my brother Kevin, who was 2 years older than me, he and I were exceptionally close growing up. Like, we're soulmates, like so close. And we used to do this thing where I was afraid of water because I'd been abused with water. And so when I was like 9, 10, my brother took me to this pool, and he was like, we're going to get you through this water thing. And so what we would do is we would hold hands, and he would, he would take a breath, and then I would sink to the bottom, and then he would go down to the bottom, and he would hold me there. Like, we would stay there, and I couldn't stand to be above the thing. And then he would blow air into my lungs, and I would feel it, like this, like opening in my lungs, and then it was like this absolute safety, and it was this beautiful connection with my brother. And so he's like, anytime you're underwater, just, like, remember that there's like, you're going to be okay. And so it was this memory of my brother just like like helping me go, even if you're afraid of water, even if you don't feel your breath, you will have this, I'm there. And then my brother died really suddenly in 2005. And then I went on this river rafting trip. So, 2005 to 2013, I went on this river rafting trip. And before my brother died, my brother was always like, you have to tell our story. You have to tell our story. And he never wanted to talk about what happened when we were kids, but he was really my witness for what happened, because we would be denied that this stuff was going on. And then as we grew older, we would call each other and go like, it really happened, right? And so when he died, I lost my witness, and I had this like thing where I was like, how I'm going to address my grief is I'm going to write down our story about what happened. And so it had been several years, and I was chipping away at this memoir, and I couldn't quite, it takes so much work to do it right. And I go on this river rafting trip that I'd been on for 9 years in a row with the school, and I'm in the front boat, and we get to this rapid that it's two rapids. So there's, one, and then like a corner and another. And they said, like, this is a really dangerous one. And if you pop out, like, it's going to be really hard, because you don't want to go through that second rapid because you'll get stuck. So, and I will just say my near death experience was a very baby one. Um, so then we go through the first rapid, and the boat like pops like this and then snaps, like popped me out. So I flew up and then hit a rock and then was trapped under the boat. And they were keeping the boat they were keeping it from going in the rapids because they wanted me to going in the next rapid, because they were hoping to get me out. But what was happening was the water was rushing, and I was going in one direction under the boat, and I was just trapped. And I had my face slammed up to the bottom of this boat, and I just had horror that I hadn't finished the book. And then I had this like, like my brother will be there. Like, there's going to be this breath. And that I was like, he's not. Like, I fucked up. I didn't write the book. And then I pushed through and I went a different direction and got out, and they got me in the boat, and there was all the kids were watching, and I was the leader. And so I just went like, okay, I'm fine. And, like, I acted like I didn't hurt myself and all that. And then I went through the rest of that day and the next, and I got home, and then I lost it and was like sobbing and knew my whole life was about to change. And then within months, I had quit my job, and I had sold everything, and I moved away to become a writer. And so in 2013, I, quit everything and dedicated myself to writing. And then I went to a master's program for writing and I just finished it. I graduate next month and I figured out how to make money as a writer and I'm doing it. So that's the big story.
Wow. I don't have any like words that's just, I mean, it's so powerful. First of all, I'm sorry to hear about the loss of your brother, especially suddenly. Um, but wow, like so many parallels. Like I'm sitting here trying to process that with the water and then the memoir or the book that you're writing. And I know what it's like to be on those damn rafting trips when they're like giving you like the, oh, and if you fall out of the boat here and it's going to be dangerous and gosh, it's so terrifying. Um, so is that the memoir you're working on that
Yeah.
you're, so when is it, do you have a planned date that it's going to be done or still working on it? I don't, forgive me because I don't know exactly how the writer world works. And I know
Mhm.
it's probably weird to be like, when is it going to be done? Because it's like things aren't done when they're done,
Yeah,
right? So
you totally know.
yes,
Um,
I get it. But how far along are you? Maybe
I
that's a weird question too.
it's I'm pretty far along. I mean, I've had many drafts. I really wanted to write it well and not just have it be a big story. I have a really big story. Like that's just I start telling people this my childhood story and it's like each little part is a giant weird thing that happened and I didn't want to just write it like that. So I have done a lot of personal work in order to get to a place to write it with like as much compassion as I can and also to just go in and really study the craft of writing. So um, my hope is that I will be finishing a draft hopefully by the beginning of June, but most likely because I've had some like setbacks that the end of June I'll have a really clear draft to send to an editor. And
That's
then
soon.
yeah, I have a writer's Instagram called Writer's Resource, and I generally just post like funny memes about writing on there. I hide behind memes a lot, so I'm stopping that. I'm going to be doing you. I've been like tipping my toe into
I've
being
noticed.
more. I just like, oh, it's just so difficult to have your face and your words out there. But I'm going to be doing a thing on my writer's one because what I'll do to get like really get my like junk in the ring about stuff is that I will put myself on contract. And one of the best things for me is that I'm like, I will do this, and if I don't, I have to shave my eyebrows off. And anytime I do
Holding
that,
yourself accountable.
I get
Wow.
it done. And so I'm not going to have a thing where I'm like, it has to be done. But I think it's like I'm writing it tonight to go, okay, what is it that I have to do? And I think the thing is, I'm going to have to sit down and work on my book, not on all these other projects I do, but on my memoir every single day until June. And if I don't, then I'll have to shave my eyebrows off
Oh my
on
goodness.
camera, which
Oh
I'm not
my,
going to do. So I will write every day.
that would be your, that will, yeah, you should just post that on Instagram, right? You want more content.
I'm
So
going to, but I'm not shaving my eyebrows off.
no, you won't. You won't. I'm manifesting that too. I'm putting it out there. You're not going to. Um, how long have you been doing spiritual as fuck?
Since 2013.
So what like motivated you to do that? Like to
Uh,
start the community?
well, when I quit the Yes School, I took 6 months away from everything, and I got off all social media. And I've never been somebody before all this who was on a bunch of social media. Um, I'm kind of a private person, which is interesting because I'm so outspoken and I'm all over social media now. But then when I was like, I'm going to take writing seriously, I was yeah, everything you hear is you need to have a platform. So I started spiritual as fuck with the teacher from the S school, and we were like, well, partly it was that a bunch of these young people were like, we thought you would be around, like you were around for these other people, because I would just nobody left. If you went to college, you could come back and come to group. You could have lunch with us. You were always going to be getting support, and then we left. And so we started it as a way to go, okay, well, at least we know this area. And I didn't want to start a blog. I didn't want to write outside of what I was wanting to write. And so the meme thing was that. And then she went back to teaching. And so then it used to be called something else, and we changed it I changed it right before she left, called Spiritual AF. And a big part of it was that people would like do this thing where they'd be like, that's not very spiritual of you. That's not very this of you, blah, blah, blah. And that there's this idea that to be into personal health, well-being and health and spirituality, that you have to speak in a certain way and only like not think certain things are funny, and that there's like some way that you can actually say like that's not spiritual. And so I mean, I felt hurt by it, but then I processed it and was like, you know what? Like, that's not what I'm about. I am about like our fuck ups are spiritual. Like, that is our information. That's the data for us. And laughing is spiritual. Like, being ridiculous is the most spiritual practice. Like, I grew up, I was in this like young people's punk rock dharma or sangha for meditating, and we would meditate and we were so serious about it, and then somebody would fart and then we'd have like a tickling match, and that is what I believe in. And so I just went, fuck it, I'm calling myself spiritual as fuck, and you can fucking suck it if you don't like it, and I'm going to post things that are funny and meaningful and vulnerable and deep and raunchy. And so that's spiritual.
No, it's real. It's real. I'm always red flag when someone is if someone's just coming on your page and like giving their unsolicited 2 cents of like, you're doing this wrong, this is how it should be. It's like, go away, right? Like you're clearly projecting some of your own shit on there, but it's like, I'm drawn to realness, to authenticity, because it's like I'm trying to find that in myself, right? So it's like the silliness, the goofing. I mean, seriousness is a disease that nobody's talking about. I got that from one of my other guests. So
I like that.
It's totally true. Even with myself, like I'm too fucking serious. Like I put so many expectations on myself, even like with these. Like I love talking like this, like just talking about whatever, but it's like I would be lying if I said during these episodes I'm not thinking that people are going to be listening to this or people are watching this, and how do I perform to be a certain way to produce something that people are going to like. And I'm trying to like, I don't want to say, I always like kill this part of myself, and not necessarily, but I'm trying to like get in touch with that part of myself that's trying to do that, right? And I think through the silliness and letting yourself be open for like the humor and the raunchiness, and it's like talking about freaking boners and all this shit, it's like that's where the healing is. That to me is more spiritual than having to sit upright in a certain place, only say a certain type of words, like whatever those people were saying. It's like yeah, I mean, that's awesome. I love your memes. I love that. But I also relate to what you're saying is like hiding behind memes, because I feel like I did that for a while and I still want to do that. But I try to like, I don't know. It's a weird thing right now where I feel like you kind of have to have a platform to like accomplish anything, to like reach people nowadays, because that's where people are. But it's like sometimes, some days I'm just like, I just want to delete all of my social media and go live in the woods. Like, fuck. Like, what? I mean, what is, I don't know. It's weird. It's like part of me likes it and part of me doesn't. I don't even know where I'm going with this, but it's hard. It's hard. This whole social media craze, I don't know where it's going. I don't know where I'm going with it.
I have this very similar thing, and because I've spent a lot of my life in the wilderness with like no electricity, and so there's this part of me that goes, I'm not made for this. I'm not made for 100
Yes.
emails a day, and people texting me and being like, why didn't you text back? Like I'm not. I feel like I'm not made for it. But then there's also that incredible beauty that comes out of it. This way that we connect. This like my little meme page has like I've gotten to talk to people, and like people like I've helped people change their lives. Like we've just just by like texting on this like platform, and simply by me going like, this is what I think is funny and this is what touches my heart, and like that I try to go about it in that generosity thing of like, what can I give you and share to connect. So I try to always go like, I want to be, I want to be generous. I want to be generous in spirit. I want to be generous in interest, and I want to be vulnerable. And there is a sliver of me that I'm willing to show here. And so that for me helps me to have that balance of the part of me that really does feel like there's a part of me that needs to be cut off and in the woods, and it's a beautiful part of myself. And there's also a part of me that has something to say, and
Mm-hmm.
a massive drive for connection, and a calling to do something. And I think anyone who does the work to like make a podcast and make a platform of any kind, and it's, not just people who want to be seen, but like have this thing of like, no, I think I have something to say, and
Yes.
I think I have something to add. And that for me is like, when I get attacked, and people like, somehow people like to attack my bangs all the time, or like that I'm, or that I'm, whatever the things are, like people, if I'm too old, or I'm too fat, or I'm too mouthy, or boners aren't great, and they're dumb, and I'm doing, a disservice to people because blah, blah, blah. I just have to consistently go back to going like, if I'm giving permission to another person to just be raw in themselves, and am I being generous? And I
Mm-hmm.
can quit at any time. And a lot of the times I think we forget that we can we don't have to delete everything. Like I took
Or
a
we
day
forget
off this week.
or we forget that we can't shut anything down. Like sometimes I'm like, I have this feeling like, oh my gosh, I've created a train that I can't get off. But it's like, wait a second, I can take a break. I
Mm,
can. And a
mhm.
lot of the times I have the pull that you do too, where it's like some days I'm like, fuck this. I need a break. I just want to go to Yosemite or go to the woods, whatever. Then I'll do that. I'll go away for a couple days. Let's say I unplug or I'm not on social media. Then I like kind of miss it. I like miss the connection in my community. I miss creating things. I miss writing my captions. I miss, storytelling. I miss that. And so I think what it comes down to is whenever I'm feeling one or the other, when I'm feeling like, fuck this, I want to leave, or, I want to be doing this or whatever, it's when I'm doing too much of one or the other. It's when you don't have the balance, right? It's not, I think sometimes I'll speak for myself. I get so caught in this idea of like, I need to be like one type of person, or like, I'm just going to like unplug, like it's the all or nothing thinking, right? Or the black or white thinking. It's like, I'm just going to unplug forever. I'm going to be isolated in the woods. I'm not going to have social media. I'm just going to meditate every single day, have my little tribe, grow my own food, and that's it. Or I'm just going to immerse myself in social media and post something like 3 times a day, and then build this podcast empire and talk to every single, like, no, you don't have to like be the extreme. And that's something that I work with all the time is letting myself be different versions of myself at different times.
Yeah. Hallelujah.
Right. No, I know. Tell me about, I'm curious to hear about, because we're kind of, as we're wrapping up here, coming to a close, your retreats. And I also want to talk about your decks, but your retreats first. I'm going to get some actually, because, well, I said we'll talk about your decks later, but I did a preview look, and they're fucking great. I love them. I'm so stoked. I'm gonna get some of my own. But your retreats, what do you hope to accomplish?
Um, well, I have a spiritual as fuck retreat coming up in Ojai in September 27th through the 29th. And I teach writing at retreat centers, and I've gone to a lot of personal development retreats. And people were like asking me, do you do retreats? Do you do these things? And then I'm like, I just am not the type to go in and like ask people to hold hands and stare into each other's eyes and do that experimental or experiential thing. But then I was like, well, what if I did the retreat I always wanted to go to, where you like have a deep like shift. You can have a space to like get that ball of light, that to get distance from your life, to get see what truly matters, and to have connection with other people, but without all the stuff that like I have to like hold my gag reflex back that I sit through to get the other stuff. And so I which is, I actually look at like the difference between judgment and discernment. And like, I've been in that like, I went to, I call it woo woo you. I went to this university that like people threw energy balls at each other in the hallway, and there was shamanic healing, and there's certain, I'm always called to that, but I'm also like somebody who's like, no, I'm not gonna, I don't, that doesn't resonate with me. That's not like, I've tried it enough to where I know that it's not just fear. It's just that I just don't want to do that shit. And it doesn't feel good to me. And so then I'm like, okay, well, for that person who's like, I don't want to do get to know you games. I fucking hate them. I want to leave. Anytime somebody's like, let's do a mingle thing where you run around and like act like an animal and you try to find your other animal. Like I actually leave. I
I've
don't
never
want to,
heard of that.
oh my God, or role playing of any kind, or
Or just
like,
being put on the spot. Like, just,
yes,
like, having to do something that's so out of your comfort zone and you're just there in your shell and you're like, "Fuck, I guess I have to do this, but I don't want to."
yeah. And I'm like, because I think how I was raised, where I'm like, I'm not going to do it because I don't want to do it, you know? Um, yeah, like I just don't think you have to. I think some places, there's certain people who really vibe with that, and that is true and authentic for them. And I want to make a retreat that's about spirituality and wellness and exploration, that is for the person who's kind of an asshole, you know, who's just like, fuck, dude, I don't want to wear mala beads, and if anyone rings a bell, I'm going to want to punch them in the face. And like having that
Well, shit,
internal
maybe
thing.
I should sign up for it then. It's like everything you're saying is resonating with me. Like you said, for some people, it's like if it's their cup of tea to do like the energy balls thing, and that's for them. But for me, like I can't even keep up with the language sometimes. Like sometimes, I have some friends or people online that we have conversations, and I remember one that sticks out is actually really funny. Like someone reached out to me and they were like, are you experiencing, any like 5D ascension, growing pains or something? And I was like, well, I don't know, because I don't know what that is, but I feel like I'm growing into new versions of myself and it's kind of uncomfortable, and like that's what I'm experiencing. And they're like, you know what? I should have just asked the question like a normal fucking person. And I was like, yeah, just like this 5D. I mean, it's like it's cool if that's what you're into, but like I'm more of a person where it's just like straightforward, like, hey, you feeling this? You feeling good? Like whatever, it's so yeah,
Yeah.
I maybe I should sign up for your retreat.
Yeah, it's like I think I like more of a straightforward didactic model, but I also am like, we're doing big work when we're doing stuff. And that like I don't think you have to embarrass yourself in order to change. And I think a lot of that work can be done through playfulness and not this thing that we're gonna pretend. So I'm more in I also want to just give the experience of the shit I used to do at the Yes School that really, really, really worked. And I have like lots of people out there living these lives that this stuff that I built and these models, like these ways of going about this, like kind of change, has shown long-term results. Like lots of kids that I worked with are having decades of real recovery, real like joyful lives, real, models within themselves about how to consistently engage with themselves in a loving way. And so that's really what I want to do with it. I'm nervous, but I'm really, really excited too.
No, that's awesome. So for people listening that may be interested, what high level, what does the retreat schedule or activities, or what sort of things do you have planned? Like, what does it look like?
Um, well, it's a short one. So you come in on a Friday, we have dinner, we, introduce ourselves. I tell you about like what we're going to do. I do a certain type of yoga that is like for people who hate yoga. It's called Kayut yoga.
Yeah.
And it's for anybody, like if you are, paraplegic, you can do this yoga. And so there'll be some of that and in the morning, and then there will be me talking a good amount and talking about things like the integrity boner or how to engage with your own integrity. So we'll delve deep into those kind of things. A lot about values clarification and how to really get to know what you really care about. We're going to have like you know, like an optional dance party because we have this big old barn that like is super cool. So we're just gonna blast music and like dance to pop music at night if we want. Um,
It's
I don't
awesome. I
want to
love
do, yeah, it's
dancing.
like, so it's gonna be like that kind of stuff. You know, yeah,
Very cool.
meditation. I'm going to lead a few meditations. What I really want to do is like, I mean, it's going to be a crash course, but it's going to be like tools. Like, here's a way to do yoga. You don't need a fucking video. Here's just a 15-minute thing. Here's a way to meditate. Here's some ways to like challenge your own thinking.
Sounds like
Here's
it's
a
very
way.
practical. I'm very drawn to like practical, useful things. It's like there's enough um people, you know, like coaches or whatever you want to call them out there that just is like, you know, they say things like be grateful. And it's like, okay, how do I fucking be grateful? Like I don't like I want to be grateful.
You
Hey,
get my deck.
yes, perfect transition.
Oh, well, you asked that question. This is how you be
Wow. And you
grateful.
know what? For people watching, we did not plan that.
No,
That was fucking awesome. So your deck. So how did that come about?
funny you should ask. Um, I started writing gratitude lists on my page because I was like in a funk and I knew that gratitude works and because from my life experience and then I started writing them and posting them as a practice of like putting myself on contract. And then within a few weeks, a woman that I'd met at a writers conference contacted me, but I get a lot of people contacting me that are like, you know, Nigerian princes and I just kind of ignored her. And so then she contacted me elsewhere and was like, I have a publishing company and I'm interested in like what you're doing. And so maybe we should talk. And then I looked it up and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like super legit. And so then we had this great talk. She ends up being one of my really good friends and I just like, love her. So it was Knock Knock Publishing and it's a gift publisher. And so then we started with the decks. And so we did Grateful as Fuck. And it's cards. What my hope was is that when people are like trying to be grateful and then you go through that thing like, oh, I'm glad I can walk, or I'm glad my hand works, or I'm glad I have a mom, or I like the sky, and then you kind of are like, what? And I don't think that like really strokes the boner, you know, it doesn't like,
No,
you
it
know.
doesn't.
And so I made all these cards where one side is something to be grateful for and the other side is me riffing on it, but it's a way to just go, well, if you pull a card every day, you're going to get something. And then maybe if Ben Franklin isn't your deal, you're going to think of some other historical figure that you're like, you know what? I'm genuinely glad that that person was alive. Or if kangaroos aren't your deal, but you're like, a fucking platypus is awesome. And I like that. Or the other thing is just like, I do a lot of writing on the back of these little cards. And what I was hoping to do is show like, well, how do you like, if you're grateful that you have food, how do you engage with it to actually give you a jolt of like real feeling of gratitude? And so that was
Yes.
my hope with those. And then I made the spiritual as fuck cards, and they are, I think of it as a self-help book in a box. And so my thing was that I wanted to write a self-help book for people that wouldn't necessarily read books. I've always thought about like you know, teenage drug addicts and then gang members and inmates um, and people with short attention spans and busy people and people, you know, and I always just read self-help books where I read like the first few pages and then I get the like gist and then I get done and I want to go.
Same
So
here.
yeah, so I took a lot of common meme stuff and then I riffed on it. And so my hope is that people will be able to like just get a little boost each time, you know?
Well, that's awesome. I mean, I'm interested in both, but the gratefulness thing, I'm very intrigued because I want to learn how to tap into gratitude, but like you said, it's like, oh my God, the other day I was like freaking out on a walk. I was just going through some shit and it's like I'm trying to tell myself like I'm walking my dog, like the sun is shining. I'm breathing. But it's like it didn't work because it's just like you have to connect the talk to the feeling of gratitude somehow. And it sounds like your deck does that, where it's like instead of just being like, I have food, it's like, how do you connect with the food in front of you to get that little jolt of gratitude? Because, you know, I think most of us have felt that. Like, there are times where I feel that jolt of gratitude where I actually feel thankful, but it's hard to practice because it just kind of usually comes out of nowhere for me. So maybe, I mean, are the decks meant to be kind of like a meditation in a way where you're like building on learning how to develop gratitude, or is it more of just kind of like a fun thing?
I mean, both. I want it to be fun. I also think like for me, I do both two things. One is that I think of gratitude as an action and that so that I'm like, am I acting with gratitude? And so part of that is like, do I, if I am grateful that I live with somebody who's so nice to me, and then I go and wash their dish with that spirit of gratitude, I will possibly get that feeling that I get from being grateful. Also, the gratitude being an action of where I set my sights. So that action of like, doesn't matter whether I'm going to feel it today or not. I'm going to be looking for where am I like given things that like are beautiful? Where is so the action of going, I will write a gratitude list. I will, that moment of walking the dog, like I recently had when I was walking the dog and she was pulling and being such a shit. And I was like, and it was starting to rain. And I was like, fuck this, and life sucks, and my back hurts, and blah, blah, blah. And then I just went like, all right, like get into gratitude, like feel your feelings. Yes, this sucks. And what's the next thing? And then I'm like, oh, like I really like her ears. She's an asshole right now, but those ears I'm so glad she has those big, weird ears. And then I didn't feel it so much, but I kind of relaxed a bit and I just went, I'm going to act with gratitude. So I don't necessarily think like people are going to agree with me on every card, but I think even just the act of being able to go, okay, some person told me that gratitude is going to help me. I'm going to just do the act of picking a card. And so that physical action is an act of gratitude. And so it'll build on that. But then there's the other thing about like with meditation and with consciousness, like we can develop quicker access to feelings. So I think like getting something where if you really, really think about it, you're going to end up having a jolt like of gratitude. Like if I think about that, I was blessed with my brother who was a fucking saint to me. Like I had a shitty, shitty childhood and my brother like defied all odds about what a great kid he was to me. And I can't think about that for very long without feeling this like above and beyond loss. I just am like, I was loved. And that is my like boom, I can feel it. And it'll go over whatever happened, it'll go over whatever shit I'm dealing with right now. So just developing that like quicker access to those feelings. So I think sometimes it's like just meditating on like getting curious about, okay, well, what actually does like make my brain like shoot out those good neurochemicals that feel like gratitude, and then using those and cultivating more and more of those.
Something powerful I heard about once about meditation was that, obviously we want to channel the act of meditation or gratitude or whatever it is when we're not feeling well to be able to access those feelings quickly and then hopefully, change gears. But the practice of meditation or the practice of gratitude actually comes when you're feeling good, because then you're making those patterns and you're developing. So for example, it's like I thought of the situation or the example with your dog. It's like you probably thought that is it a boy or girl?
Girl.
So you probably thought that you liked her ears at another time, maybe when you were feeling lighter or happy, and you put that in your mind and it's like it aligned, right? So then you can access that in all the other muck of like she's pulling and it's raining, and you can access that one thought or feeling that made you feel good back when you were feeling good so it's like I think a lot of the time these things are a practice and they build and they build and they build. Like I know when I first started meditating in the beginning, I just expected it to like make me feel better. Like I hadn't really practiced or anything, but it's really like a lifelong practice that builds and builds and builds and builds. And we access these part of ourselves that we can then bring up later when we need to, and it's like a muscle.
It is a muscle. It's muscle memory. You do calisthenics. Like I was a swing dancer and I danced this dance where we would go 300 beats a minute and there was no thinking. I had to have my muscles just knowing boop, 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 boop. And so I didn't get like, oh, it didn't work because I was doing drills for 3 years to be able to step out on the dance floor and do that. And so I think of meditation and I think of like milking the right udders in my brain as that, as muscle memory. I'm gonna, yeah. So it's muscle.
God,
Yeah.
I want to do swing dancing now. It makes me think of I did swing dancing in high school, and um, I remember I kind of like stuck out because I strategically picked. There was like this, so it was an all girls body shaping class in PE in high school, and one of my friends was from like Yugoslavia. She was like 6'2". She was just such a powerful, like tall girl. And I strategically picked her to be my partner because I'm like, she can flip me, she can like, do all like we can do all these cool ass things.
Mm-hmm.
And then we actually won the competition. But because I had her, I naturally stuck out because I was like this little thing that she could just throw around. So like I looked like I knew what I was doing probably way more than I did, but I was actually pretty decent. But then the guy that they brought in to teach the swing class, who he was like an expert, he had been doing it for years. He actually he like was like he was going to pick somebody to like try to just lead, and he picked me. And I remember we went so fast, but I didn't know the dance. He just led me, and it was like you just said, I wasn't thinking, I was just going, and it was like this really like powerful form of like meditation almost, if you will, of just going with it. And then I I just it happened. It happens without thinking. And it's like I want to channel shit like that. Like the getting out of the thinking mind and getting into the flow state. I actually said this the other day. You only realize you were in the flow state when you're actually back in the thinking mind because you're thinking about that you were in the flow state and that you're not in the flow state anymore, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yeah. I
Just some
think swing dancing trained my body to be happy before my mind. And I just put my body in the happiness, in the positions of happiness, like pulled back and up and like out, and like a big part of it was smiling. And I think that just doing things that put us in the position of, having our bodies be relaxed before our minds, or having our minds learn to relax and then it informing our bodies. Like anything that we're practicing, it's curiosity and practicing.
The body, I talk a lot about the body. I think the body is so important. That's why I talk a lot about diet. I talk a lot about, hydration, um, just how you're treating your physical body, your posture. How much are you moving, walking? Are you walking around like this? You walking around with your chest up? So many things because at a subconscious level, it affects us so greatly. And I think that for a starting point for anybody, it depends on where an individual is. But if someone feels very lost, they don't know what they're doing, they're just trying to find purpose, meaning, whatever it is, I always recommend starting with the physical body. And now that may not work for everybody, but for someone that doesn't really know what to do, I think the physical body is a great place to start. Like you said, movement, posture, diet, hydration. Do you have like any deficiencies? Like there's so many things that could be contributing to simple physical discomfort, that if that physical discomfort was then removed because you got it squared away or taken care of, all of a sudden now you can access your mind in such a different way. Or you change your condition, and then that's changing your mind without you even really being aware that it's changing your mind. It's just you start to feel better in your skin, more confident, all that.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree.
Oh, wow. Well, shit, we've been at this for nearly 2 hours, and we talked about a lot. And God, I appreciate, like, there's so many things I'm gonna have to probably rewatch the beginning of this episode because, like you said, so many gems about addiction, and it's something that I think needs to be talked about more. And I really appreciate your time. So as we come to a close here, I just wanted to give you the platform now, for anybody listening, to talk about where to find you, where to find, your decks. And, we already kind of talked about the retreat, but any information that you just want to share with anyone who's listening.
Well, thank you. Actually, I just had a great time. I like looked up and I was like, oh my gosh, it's been 2 hours. Are there people still watching? Because I've been so into this. I'm like,
I know, me too.
um,
I'm trying to see, actually. I don't even know how many people we've had. Oh, wow. Yeah, there's 3 people watching right now. I didn't.
Hi, 3 people.
Very
You made
cool.
it.
I know, right? The trio.
Yeah. Well, what am I doing? You can find the decks if you go to Instagram, spiritual_AF. I have a link tree in my bio and it has a lot of links. So if you're interested in the retreat, you can find the link there. The decks, you can get the decks at urbanoutfitters.com or at knockknockstuff.com or on Amazon. But Amazon has been wonky, so I am trying to steer people to the other places. But there's a link on my page for that. I'm going to be in LA on May 18th at this Women's Circle Talk. It's at the Dynasty or Typewriter Theater, and it's going to be talking about enough is enough. And I'm like so excited about this whole event. So if you're in LA, it's like $15 to come, and it's going to be a really great day. And then I am launching a newsletter really, really soon. So you can sign up for my newsletter. I'm going to be I think the first topic I'm going to really delve into is gratitude, because I got shit to say about gratitude. And then just follow me on Instagram and on Facebook. I'm Spiritual AF on Facebook. Oh, and RoxanMcDonald.com. But Roxanne, it's spelled like a chemical, Roxan, like Roxanne, and a McDonald, like McDonald's.
Wait, like a chemical? Explain that.
Well, you know how it's like, if you look at the chemicals, they're all like very, like I just wrote my name and I was like, this looks like, I guess nitrogen is longer, but it just looks like a chemical to me. Roxan, doesn't it? Roxan.
Well, it's usually, I mean, because like it's not spelled in the conventional way, right? Like usually it's Roxanne. That's how I typically see it. But that's interesting that you said the chemical. I don't know that I envisioned a chemical, but like it does sound more, or it does look more like affirmative, like oomph, right? Yeah, I don't know.
And not
Chemicals.
grammatically correct. It's not my fault, it's my mom. But
hey,
I think
unique.
if I ever change my name, I'm going to put an NNE because I just want,
It's unique though. I mean, I've never seen it before. So you're like in my life, you're the one and only Roxan. So for whatever that's worth. But thank you so much, Roxanne with one N, for coming for coming on. Like you just said, like the 2 hours, like boom, just went by. I'm sure I'll have you on again in the future. We'll talk about something else intriguing. But I always ask if any parting words, to summarize what you would want to share with people watching as a takeaway.
Well, I just want to say thank you again. This has been a really great interview, and I really love talking to you. And I guess because of what we talked about, I'm just going to say you got to pick your boner. What boner you're going to stroke, and then just get as many experts on that kind of boner stroking and ask them. So pick your boner to stroke.
Easy enough. I think I'm going to make that the title of, because I always put little titles of the in the previews, and I think no, for real, like this is awesome. Like pick your boner, people. Pick your boner.
I don't want people sending me boner pics though. Like I do not. I will send them to your mom.
Dude, that I mean, I know we're coming to an end here, but I gotta say that happened to me once on Instagram. Some dude from France straight up sent me a picture of his dick. Yeah. And I was like, what do you expect from this? Like, are you kidding me? This fucking world is just insane right now. Some shit.
They should expect it to be sent to the women in their lives.
Yeah, seriously.
Immediately.
I know.
Find who it is, and then you say, your husband sent this. That will stop it. So don't send me boner pics, even though I'm using it as a really great metaphor.
Or it can get even really fucking weird, and then she's like, I know.
Oh, no, that hasn't happened.
No. All right. Well, I'm going to go off live here soon, and you and I will keep talking. But for those listening, pick your boner. Pick the boner to stroke. That's it. I am going off live in 3, 2, 1. Thank you.